Just when you thought no one could damage their own brand more than Bud Light, whose sales have plunged by 21% since arranging for trans woman Dylan Mulvaney to promote their product, the US Navy has said, "Hold my beer." The Navy has appointed a drag queen to be the face of an online recruitment drive in a bid to encourage reluctant young men to join up. Yeoman Second Class Joshua Kelly, who identifies as non-binary and goes by the stage name Harpy Daniels, has been acting as the Navy's digital ambassador. Advertising themselves as sailor by day, drag queen by night, Kelly says they are proud to serve, proud to slay. I'm certain Xi Jinping is shaking in his heels. Sorry, boots. Vice Chief of Naval Operations Admiral Lisa Franchetti told the House Armed Services Committee last month that the Navy is projected to fall 6,000 recruits, or 16%, short of its goal for enlisted sailors this fiscal year. So they're exploring new recruitment strategies, such as this one.
We reached the moon, but lost in space. I think we got there all too soon. But you know what? I'm coming back for you, baby. I'm coming back for you.
And if that doesn't convince young men to join the Navy, there's this.
Oh, la, 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 this throat, Lady Gaga. Boys say hallelujah. Give me that, yeah, 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 yeah.
Meanwhile, Iran has seized a second US-bound oil tanker in a week, and the Chinese Communist Party has unveiled its newest aircraft carrier that claims to be able to carry more aircraft with more munitions flying on longer missions. All of which raises the big question, can the West's obsession with woke survive a full-blown war? Or will Chinese missiles soon explode the never-never land of unreality in which we've all been living? It's early days, of course, but so far, the West's mythical land of prancing unicorns looks pretty much bulletproof. Even as rockets started raining down on Ukraine, Western elites were worried about how the war would affect LGBTQ people, as if Putin might have developed queer-seeking missiles. Others voiced concerns that grandparents, huddled in bomb shelters beneath the pockmarked streets of Kiev, might not be social distancing. And the New York Times lamented that few of the Ukrainians fleeing for their lives were wearing masks. They probably weren't triple boosted either, and God forbid any of them were shot dead without first using a QR code to check out. Meanwhile, former US Secretary of State John Kerry expressed dismay at what he called the emissions consequences of war in Europe.
Massive emissions consequences to the war, but equally importantly, you're going to lose people's focus. You're going to lose certainly big country attention because they will be diverted. And I think it could have a damaging impact.
So John Kerry would presumably be far more comfortable with the Russian invasion had Putin's tanks first met strict European emission standards. Kerry said he hoped Vladimir Putin would stay on track with fighting climate change, even while he's fighting the Ukrainians. We can only hope the Russian army will sort the plastics from the metal bomb casings when they get around to removing corpses from the battlefield. Why do the Russians need to use munitions anyway? Couldn't they just deploy, hashtags? We do. Those who say cockroaches are the only things that will survive a nuclear holocaust are wrong. On the evidence available so far, woke, that virus of the mind that's turned Westerners into mindless unicorn-chasing simpletons, will probably survive as well. The Russians may well destroy Europe and China may well dominate the Pacific, but they'll never kill our stupid. The US Navy's recruitment drive, led by a drag queen, illustrates perfectly the extraordinary disconnect between the imaginary world of the West and the cold, hard reality that is right now casting shadows over the free world. As Russia, China and Iran are conspiring to divide up the globe, the US is boasting that the Navy is a safe space for men wanting to dress as women. If the world does descend into war, as many expect it will, the West might not win, but by God will be the most diverse losers in military history. If only the Chinese Communist Party would challenge us to Celebrate Diversity Day, we'd kick ass. Western armies may well comprise the nicest soldiers you could ever meet on a battlefield. Just ask the Taliban. Oh, you'd like a Black Hawk helicopter, would you? Here, have 33. And would you like Humvees with that? Have 27. Little wonder that after watching American soldiers run away from a bunch of Afghani goat herders, Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping have decided to try their luck. It's not by accident that the acronym for the West's favourite things, diversity, inclusion and equity, is DIE. Putin wants to fight. So much toxic masculinity. If our military leaders want to discuss unacceptable behaviours, they might like to talk about their total unpreparedness for conflict. For decades now, we in the West have imagined we live in a post-war world. Conflict was like so last century. With the loss of Christianity, we lost the doctrine of original sin. That's the idea that human beings, while made in the image of God, are fallen and so have a propensity towards evil. Instead of preparing for the inevitability of conflict, we embrace the illusion of the brotherhood of man and the perfectibility of mankind. Singing John Lennon's Imagine, as only a decadent culture would, we slashed defence spending so we could focus instead on welfare and aged pensions and pet projects like wind turbines that incidentally would be a great defence if only the Chinese invade using pigeons. What soldiers we've bothered funding, we trained as peacekeepers to win hearts and minds rather than as warriors to kill the enemy. Violence is nasty, you see, and so unnecessary. And whether or not they can shoot is far less important than whether or not they can use pronouns. Here's more of that Navy recruitment drive.
And what they did is they just simply asked me what my pronouns were in a simple conversation. Not right away. They just were just talking business, and then finally we got into just some small talk, and they asked me what my pronouns were, and I thought it was incredible to see that inclusion and change to be seen. And I think it's so important for that because it shows the change physically. I'm experiencing it, and I hope everyone else does.
This is the defund the police generation, remember? We can't imagine a problem that can't be solved by people holding hands in a circle and singing Kumbaya, or by sitting down with a social worker who has a PhD in gender studies. If and when war does break out, the West will appeal to international law. But international law can only be upheld by force, and we stopped believing in that years ago. The West will appeal to the United Nations, but the United Nations Security Council was chaired by Russia at the very time Russia was invading Ukraine. The UN General Assembly's most likely response to World War III is to agree on harsh sanctions against Israel. On and on it goes. We've lived in a world of illusion, and we show no sign of wanting to give it up. But reality may soon hit us like a rocket. Do you think we'll be prepared?